You clicked on this video, not out of boredom, not by random chance, but because something in you is seeking peace. Not the kind of peace that's passive or fleeting, but the kind that endures when chaos swirls around you. Maybe you're tired of reacting too quickly, tired of losing control in moments that matter most, tired of feeling like your emotions run the show. You're not weak, you're aware. You're not broken, you're ready. That's why you're here, because somewhere deep inside, you know that calm is not the absence of emotion, it's the presence of mastery. And Stoicism, though ancient, still whispers the kind of truths we hunger for today. Marcus Aurelius once ruled an empire, and his biggest battle wasn't out there, it was inside. His journal meditations was never meant for anyone to read. It was a private map for navigating inner storms. You now hold that map too. This video is your journey. You'll learn 8 Stoic strategies, each one tested by time, each one designed to help you recognize, soften, and transform your emotions, not by suppressing them, but by guiding them. You'll see how small shifts in thought create massive shifts in emotional control. You'll see how peace isn't distant, it's practiced. And as you listen, if this feels right, if this voice, this calm, this rhythm feels like a space you want to return to, subscribe. Not for more noise, but for the quiet strength. A space to think, reflect, and grow. Because you're not here to escape your feelings. You're here to learn how to feel without being ruled by them. This is your first step. This is where emotional freedom begins. Number 1, mastering the pause. There's a moment, barely noticeable, that changes everything. It happens after someone says something cruel, after your heart starts to race, after life throws a surprise you didn't ask for. There's a flash between what happens and how you respond. Most people never see it. They move too quickly, react before they breathe, say things they don't mean, do things they later regret, but not you, not anymore. You're here to learn the art of that sacred pause, the thin space where power lives. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." What does that mean? It means that in the heat of emotion, your reaction is a choice, not a chain. You are not a puppet, pulled by strings of frustration or fear. You have the ability to step back, to reflect, to change your course. This space between stimulus and response, this is the Stoic pause. Think of it like this. Imagine standing beside a river. You see leaves, sticks, maybe even a few branches drifting past. The current is strong. Each leaf is a thought, each branch an emotion. If you jump into the water, you'll be swept away by the stream, carried wherever it goes. That's what happens when you react without thinking. But if you stay on the riverbank, if you watch instead of jump, you start to understand the flow. You begin to notice patterns, and suddenly the river doesn't control you anymore. You are no longer inside the chaos. You are watching it. That's the pause. This idea isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. Modern studies show that when you interrupt the emotional loop, even by a few seconds, you engage the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain. You switch from reaction to intention. It's like flicking a switch inside your mind, changing the lighting from red hot to cool blue. So how do you begin? Start by noticing the moments that trigger you. The tension in your jaw, the rising heat in your chest, the urge to interrupt, yell, escape, lash out, shut down. Don't judge it, just observe, then breathe slowly. Even just one breath can break the loop. Say to yourself, I'm noticing the feeling. I don't need to become the feeling. That's the difference between reacting and responding. This practice won't be perfect. You'll forget. You'll slip. That's okay. Even Marcus Aurelius slipped. That's why he wrote reminders to himself every single day. Because self-mastery isn't something you achieve once. It's something you practice always. The Stoics weren't saints. They were students. You are too. A metaphor for you. Think of an archer. Every shot they take is affected by wind, tension, heartbeat. If they rush, they miss. But if they pause steady, their breath center, their aim, the arrow flies true. Your words are arrows. Your actions are arrows. Where you aim them, how you release them, depends on the pause. The space before you speak is where your character is forged. Now ask yourself, when was the last time I paused instead of reacted? What did it change? What might have changed if I had? Don't just rush to the next section. Reflect. That's what Stoicism is built on, self-inquiry. And once you make this pause a habit, even in small ways, you'll start to notice something strange. The world around you doesn't seem quite as loud. Other people's moods don't dictate yours. Your emotions are still there, but they're no longer driving the car. You are. So the next time life stirs something sharp in you, pause. Let the moment expand just enough to see what's really happening inside. Let your better self catch up. Let your mind lead your emotion, not the other way around. Because power doesn't always look like strength. Sometimes it looks like silence before the right response. And that silence is yours to claim. Number 2, emotions are judgments, not facts. You feel anger, you feel fear, you feel jealousy, and it seems so real, so immediate, so true. But what if it isn't? What if your emotions aren't facts, but interpretations? That's not to say your feelings aren't valid, they are. But the meaning you attach to them, the story you tell yourself in the moment, that's where the distortion happens. Epictetus, the Stoic teacher who spent much of his life in slavery, wrote, "Man is disturbed not by things, but by the views he takes of them." Pause with that for a second. Not by things, but by your view of them. You feel rejected after someone ignores your message. But what if they were just overwhelmed? You feel anxious before a conversation. But what if you're imagining a conflict that hasn't even happened? Your emotion is real, but the judgment behind it, that's where Stoicism begins its work. Here's the key. Your brain is like a courtroom. Each emotion steps in with a case. She disrespected me. They don't appreciate me. This is unfair. But the Stoic in you, the judge, pauses, asks, is this true? Do I know the whole picture? Is there another way to see this? Suddenly your emotional story unravels or transforms. Imagine walking through fog. At first, everything seems unclear. Your footing feels uncertain. That fog, it's your unquestioned emotion. But then sunlight cuts through, just a little. That light is your inquiry. You begin to see the outline of the road, the truth of the moment. And you realize the fog was in your mind, not the world. This doesn't mean you should suppress what you feel. Stoicism isn't about bottling things up. It's about becoming aware of what the feeling is trying to tell you and whether it's telling the truth. Let's say you feel insulted. Instead of reacting, ask, what did I expect from this person? Am I taking this too personally? Is this really about them or something deeper in me? This single step turns a wave of emotion into a moment of insight. You are not your judgments. You are the one who examines them. That is power. That is freedom. A metaphor for you. Think of your emotions like tinted sunglasses. Each pair gives the world a different shade. Red for anger, blue for sadness, green for envy. You walk around assuming the world looks that way, forgetting you're wearing lenses. But when you take them off, when you examine the story behind the emotion, you see things as they are. Neutral, clear, whole. And here's something surprising. When you start seeing emotions as judgments, you gain compassion, not coldness. You begin to understand others too. They're not being rude. They're in pain. They're not ignoring you. They're distracted by their own storm. You become less reactive and more connected. That's the paradox. By examining your own feelings, you become better at relating to others with kindness, not assumption. So how do you begin? You don't need to question every emotion, but start with the ones that spike, the ones that take over. Write them down. Ask, oh, what am I feeling? Yos o penshay. What story am I telling myself? Is there another angle? You'll notice the emotions soften, not disappear, just loosen its grip. And with practice, you'll begin to catch it earlier. You'll hear the judgment forming. You'll feel the rise of emotion, and then the breath, the space, the clarity. This is the heart of Stoic mastery. Ask yourself now, what emotion have I accepted as fact? That might just be a story. When did I last react to something? Only to realize I misunderstood it. Let that question sit with you. Don't answer too quickly. Sometimes wisdom is born in silence. You don't need to fight your emotions. You need to understand them. That's what Stoicism gives you, not a sword to cut them down, but a lantern to see them clearly. Because once you see that emotions are judgments, not truths, you no longer fear them. You listen, you learn, you lead with reason. Number 3, the view from above. When emotion hits hard, everything shrinks. Your thoughts narrow, your vision tunnels. The only thing that exists is the feeling loud, close, consuming. That's when you need what the Stoics called the view from above. A mental shift, a quiet rising, a calm climb out of your own mind, so you can see more clearly. Marcus Aurelius used this technique often. He wrote, "Observe the rhythm of the seasons, the harmony in the universe, and your own small part in the whole." When his mind felt cornered by emotion, he zoomed out. He imagined the earth from the sky, then from the stars. He saw himself as one soul among many breathing inside an immense cosmos. And suddenly, his problems felt smaller. His anger felt softer. His grief had room to breathe. Here's why it matters. When you're stuck in emotion, you're often stuck in ego. Your story, your stress, your hurt. And that's natural, but it can also distort reality. Zooming out doesn't mean your feelings aren't valid. It just reminds you they're not the whole story. Think of it like this. Imagine holding a glass of water. If you hold it at your side, it's light. Hold it to your eyes, it blocks your view. Hold it to your chest, it begins to weigh you down. Same glass, same water. The difference is perspective. That's the Stoic view from above. You can practice this in moments of tension. When you feel overwhelmed, pause and ask, what would this look like from the sky? What does your house look like, your city? Your problem, can you see yourself from above, sitting at a desk, standing in a room, walking through a park? Now go higher. Imagine the streets, the traffic, the people. Now higher still, the curve of the earth, the clouds moving silently. From here, your heartache is real, but it's not everything. It exists, but not alone. This isn't about minimizing pain. It's about restoring proportion. When a single emotion fills your whole view, you lose your footing. You believe this is how it's always been. Hell, it will always be, but it won't. The view from above reminds you that time moves. Clouds shift, wounds heal. This moment is a moment, not a sentence. There's another gift in this practice. It softens your judgment of others. You start to see the entire person, not just their worst behavior. You realize the stranger who snapped at you is also a parent, a friend, someone struggling with their own invisible battles. Zooming out creates room for empathy. Try this. Next time you feel consumed by a strong emotion, frustration, heartbreak, fear, close your eyes and rise in your mind. Float above the room, then the street, then the sky. Look down on the earth and find yourself again, not small, not insignificant, just connected, part of something larger, a soul within a vast breathing whole, a metaphor for you. Picture a painter nose pressed to the canvas. All they can see is a blur of colors. They step back suddenly, it's a landscape. The image makes sense. You are the painter. Emotions blur your vision. But when you take a step back, you see the masterpiece, even if it's not finished yet. So ask yourself, what would this moment look like? From above. What if I'm not at the center but part of the pattern? How might that change the weight I'm carrying? These aren't questions for your mind to rush. They're for your spirit to rest in. The view from above isn't escape, it's perspective. And perspective is clarity, because when you rise above the storm, you don't just survive it. You begin to understand it, to guide yourself through it, to see that you're never as lost as you feel. You're just too close to the moment, and with distance comes peace. Number 4, accept, then act. There's a strange kind of tension inside you. You want control of your life, your path, your emotions. And yet the world often feels out of your hands. People disappoint, plans unravel, the future stays unknown. This tension creates frustration, resistance, even despair. But the Stoics offer a powerful shift. Acceptance is not giving up, it's gearing up. Epictetus, who lived through slavery and hardship, gave this wisdom: don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it does and you will be fine. This is not passivity, it's the foundation of action. Because when you stop wasting energy resisting what already is, you finally free that energy to move forward. Here's the difference. Most people react like this: this shouldn't have happened, this isn't fair, I can't deal with this. And while those reactions are human, they keep you stuck. The Stoic says instead, this happened, I accept it. Now what can I do? Not cold, not numb, just clear. Think of a sailor. They can't control the wind. They don't waste time cursing the sea. Instead, they adjust their sails. They accept the wind's direction. Then they act with skill. That's you. Your emotions are waves. Some come calm, others crash hard. You can scream at the storm or steer through it. Acceptance is the wheel in your hand. This mindset has power. It breaks the cycle of emotional resistance. So often we add suffering to suffering. We feel pain, then feel angry that we feel pain. We feel fear, then judge ourselves for being afraid. But when you say, this is how I feel, it's okay to feel it. You stop the spiral, and from that still place, you ask, now what's the next right thing? Let's take a real-life example. You lose a job. The mind races. This is terrible. I don't deserve this. Everything is ruined. But the Stoic pause says, this happened. I don't have to like it, but I can face it. Then you take a breath, update your resume, ask for help, find the next step. Acceptance didn't stop the pain. It stopped the paralysis. Another metaphor for you. Imagine standing in the rain. You can shout at the sky, or you can open an umbrella and keep walking. That doesn't mean you love the rain, but you don't waste yourself fighting it. You move through. That's strength. That's wisdom. In your emotional life, this means you accept that sadness visits. You accept that anger rises. You accept that not everything will go your way, but you don't let those things decide your direction. You are not passive. You are present. You are not resigned. You are ready. So how do you practice this? Start small. When something upsets you, pause. Say silently, I accept this moment as it is. What is in my control right now? Then do that thing, no matter how small. Maybe it's sending a message, taking a breath, getting some fresh air, writing down a thought instead of reacting to it. That's how Stoics act with calm, deliberate purpose. Ask yourself now, what am I resisting that's already happened? What might shift if I stopped fighting and started responding? Your answers don't need to come quickly. Let them rise. The clarity will come. And when it does, something beautiful happens. You begin to see that life isn't always yours to direct, but how you show up for it, that part is yours, always. You don't need to like everything that happens, but you can meet it with grace. Because when you accept first and act second, you move with wisdom, and that movement becomes peace. Number 5, voluntary discomfort. Comfort is easy to chase. A warm room, a familiar routine, a scroll to numb the noise. But what if comfort is the very thing weakening your emotional resilience? The Stoics believed that too much ease leads to fragility, not strength. So they practiced something most people run from: voluntary discomfort. Seneca, the wealthy Roman philosopher, wasn't against pleasure, but he warned of becoming dependent on it. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself, the while, is this the condition I feared?" In other words, practice what you fear until it no longer has power over you. But how does this relate to emotion? Every time you avoid a difficult feeling, you train your mind to fear it. You start to believe, I can't handle sadness. I must escape boredom. I must fix discomfort right away. And so, you run, you scroll, you numb, you distract. But the Stoic way is different. It says, sit with it, stay, watch, learn. Imagine building a fire. You don't wait for warmth to come to you. You gather wood, you strike a spark. It takes effort, friction, maybe some smoke in your eyes. But the heat it brings, it's real, it's earned. That's what voluntary discomfort is. A controlled burn so life's wildfires don't destroy you. Try this. Turn down your comfort dial just a little. Go for a walk without your phone. Sleep without a pillow. Fast for a morning. Take a cold shower. Not to suffer, but to remind yourself, I can do hard things. I can feel discomfort without panicking. I don't need to escape every time something feels uneasy. Emotionally, this trains something deeper. You learn to sit with sadness without rushing to cover it up. You learn to ride out frustration without exploding. You learn to let the feeling exist without being consumed by it. Like waves hitting a rock, the rock remains. You become the rock. This practice builds inner spaciousness. Most people collapse under emotion because they've never trained stillness, never practiced patience, never let the fire pass through them without flinching. But the Stoic learns to say, this moment feels hard, and I can still stand in it. That's the kind of strength no one sees, but you feel it. Quiet, anchored, real. Another metaphor for you. Think of a tree in the wind. If it's grown in perfect conditions, never bent, never challenged, it snaps in the first storm. But a tree that has swayed in the wind, stood through drought-weathered cold, it flexes, it bends, it holds. You are that tree. Each small discomfort you choose is another ring of strength in your core. So ask yourself, when was the last time I chose discomfort to grow? What emotion have I been avoiding that I could safely face? The answer might come slowly. Let it. Don't force the practice. But don't wait for life to do it for you. Voluntary discomfort is training for when the real test comes. Because the truth is, life will challenge you. You will lose. You will ache. You will be thrown into the unknown. But if you've practiced stillness in the small storms, you won't be shaken by the bigger ones. This doesn't mean you reject all comfort. You still enjoy, you still rest, you still breathe deeply in ease, but you don't rely on it. You carry your calm with you because you built it under pressure. The Stoics didn't just read philosophy, they lived it. They tested their mind so they could trust their mind. And so can you. Every time you lean into discomfort with open eyes, you teach your nervous system, I am safe, I am strong, I can feel and stay. This is not suffering for the sake of it. This is training for the life you want and the person you're becoming. Number 6, Amor Fati, loving what is. Some days you want to scream. This shouldn't be happening. The job you lost, the friend who left, the plan that fell apart. You resist, you ache, you replay every detail wishing it had gone differently. But the Stoics offer something radical, not just acceptance, but love. The phrase is Amor Fati, Latin for love of fate. Marcus Aurelius, facing war, betrayal, and illness, wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness. out of everything that is thrown into it. He didn't say endure fate. He didn't say tolerate it. He said love it. Because when you embrace what comes, you stop seeing life as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something that happens for you. Let's pause. What does it mean to love your fate? It means greeting hardship with open arms, not because it's pleasant, but because it's yours. It means trusting that even pain can shape your purpose. Imagine a sculptor carving a statue. Every strike of the chisel is loss. The stone resists, but with each cut, something more refined begins to emerge. You are the stone. Life is shaping you. The cuts hurt, but they reveal your form. That's Amor Fati, not giving up, not romanticizing suffering, but trusting the process. This mindset rewires your emotional response. Instead of saying, "Why me?" you ask, "What now?" What's the invitation in this moment? You turn obstacles into fuel. You turn wounds into wisdom. You don't have to love what happened, but you can love what it makes possible. Let's take a real example. You were betrayed by someone you trusted. Pain floods in. Your first instinct is to resist it, to stay angry, to shut down. But the Stoic pause asks, can this teach me something? Can this grow my strength, my discernment, my boundaries? You may not love the betrayal, but you might learn to love the clarity it brought. That's how fire becomes light. Here's how to begin practicing Amor Fati. Start small. When something frustrating happens, miss train, tough conversation, change of plans, pause. Say silently, this is part of the path. Then ask, how can I use this? This shifts you from resistance to creation. You're no longer a victim of fate. You're a co-creator with it. Another metaphor for you, picture a river winding through rock and forest. It doesn't argue with the terrain, it flows through it, over it, around it. And by flowing, it shapes the land itself. You are the river. Your power is in movement, not resistance. And when you flow with your fate, you reshape it. There's beauty in this. You start to trust life, even when it stings. You begin to feel a deep confidence that whatever happens, you can meet it. Not coldly, but with heart. Because what comes your way isn't always what you wanted, but it might just be what you needed. So ask yourself, what moment in my past felt wrong, but now I see it changed me? What am I resisting right now that I could learn to accept, even embrace? These are not easy questions. They ask you to surrender control and claim your strength. But when you do, you begin to feel something strange, something powerful, a peace not born of ease, but of alignment. Amor Fati doesn't mean everything is good. It means you can use everything for good, even grief, even loss, even failure, because you are a blazing fire, and what's thrown into you only makes you shine brighter. Number 7, don't borrow suffering. You feel a tightness in your chest, not from what's happening right now, but from what might happen. You worry. You imagine worst-case scenarios. You replay conversations that haven't even occurred, and the weight, it's real. But the Stoics saw this for what it is, borrowed suffering. Seneca, the philosopher who walked among emperors and exiles, said it plainly, he suffers more than necessary, who suffers before it is necessary. In other words, you live through the pain twice, once in your mind, and again if it actually happens. But only one of those is real. Here's the heart of it. Worry is your mind trying to gain control over what it can't predict. It imagines the loss, the failure, the rejection, and rehearses it like a performance. You think it's preparation, but it's exhaustion. It drains your strength before the moment even arrives. Imagine this. You're carrying a backpack. In it, you've packed food, water, and stones. Each stone is a worry about tomorrow, a fear that hasn't happened, a scenario that may never come true. You feel heavy, slower, strained. But what if you reached back and began to toss those stones out? That's what Stoicism teaches you to do, to carry only what's real, only what's here. Anxiety isn't weakness. It's often the result of deep care. You want to protect your life, your people, your future. But fear, when unexamined, becomes a thief, stealing the present moment while offering nothing certain in return. The Stoics didn't deny danger. They simply refused to live in it before it arrived. How can you practice this? Start by noticing your inner narration. When you catch yourself spiraling, pause. Ask, is this happening now, or am I imagining it? If it's real, respond. If it's imagined, release. It's not your job to rehearse every possible failure. It's your job to meet reality as it comes, with calm, with strength, with clarity. Here's something helpful. Make a circle of control in your mind. Inside the circle, your actions, your responses, your decisions today. Outside the circle, other people's choices, future events, unknown outcomes. Focus your energy inside the circle. The rest, let it be. Another metaphor for you. Picture standing in the rain with an umbrella. You're dry, safe, but you're panicking about tomorrow's forecast. You obsess over whether the storm will come, and in doing so, you miss the gentle stillness of this very moment. That's what anxiety steals, not just peace, presence, and presence is where your power lives. Stoicism invites you to replace panic with preparation. If something worries you, make a plan. Take action where you can, and if nothing can be done, then let it go. Because worrying doesn't stop the storm. It just stops you from enjoying the sunshine while it lasts. Ask yourself, what pain am I carrying that hasn't even happened yet? What weight could I put down right now? These questions aren't for your mind alone. They're for your nervous system, your breath, your soul. Let the answers rise slowly. This doesn't mean you become careless or passive or naive. You still plan, you still care, you still prepare wisely, but you don't let imagined futures poison present moments. Because today, this exact second is the only ground you stand on, and it's sacred. The Stoics teach you this: meet reality with full attention, not shadows of what might be, not ghosts of what could go wrong, just this moment, right now, fully lived. You don't need to borrow pain from the future. You already have everything you need to face life as it unfolds. So don't rehearse tragedy, rehearse strength, rehearse presence, rehearse peace. Because when the future arrives, you'll be ready, not from worrying, but from living. Number 8, the Inner Citadel. You've been shaken before, by loss, by betrayal, by fear, by things you didn't expect and others you couldn't control. But there's a place within you that remains untouched, a place where no insult reaches, no failure defines you, no storm tears you apart. The Stoics called this place the Inner Citadel. Marcus Aurelius, in the darkest hours of his rule, reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength, not over the world, not over others, but over your own mind. That's where freedom lives. That's where emotional mastery begins. A citadel is a fortress, not loud, not flashy, just immovable. While the world rages outside its walls, within it is calm, it is ordered, it is still. You have this fortress inside you. You've just forgotten how to reach it. Emotions are not the enemy. They're messengers. But when they arrive like an army, uninvited, overwhelming, you need a place to retreat to. That place is not escape. It's return. Back to your breath. Back to your reason. Back to the quiet truth beneath the noise. That's the inner citadel. Imagine this. The wind howls, the rain slams against the stone. But inside the thick walls, there's a room with a single candle glowing, safe, unshaken. That candle is your awareness. It doesn't flicker from panic. It doesn't dim with doubt. It just burns, steady. That's what you're protecting. This isn't a place you visit once. It's a home you rebuild every day. Through your choices, through your pauses, through your courage to feel without letting feelings drive. The Stoics didn't ask you to numb yourself. They asked you to know yourself so deeply that nothing from the outside could break what's within. You begin to live differently. You speak with intention. You respond without rushing. You hold silence when others erupt in noise. Not because you're pretending, but because you've touched that still core inside you, and it holds you steady. How do you build this citadel? Start with self-honesty. Ask what shakes me most often. What stories do I tell myself in moments of fear? Where in me do I retreat when things fall apart? Then begin to create space, not just in your schedule, but in your inner world. Meditation, journaling, walking in quiet, letting thoughts rise and fall without chasing them. Each practice is another brick in your inner wall. And when life comes fast, when someone criticizes you, when a plan falls apart, when you feel anger, shame, grief rising, you'll know where to go. Not away from the emotion, but deeper into yourself, into the part of you that watches, that stays, that waits calmly for clarity to return. A metaphor for you, think of the ocean. The surface is wild, crashing waves, strong currents. But deep below, there is stillness. Always. That's your mind. Most people live on the surface. The Stoic dives deeper, not to escape, but to connect to something unshakable. Ask yourself now, where do I go emotionally when life feels too much? Do I panic? Or do I pause? Do I react? Or return? Who am I? At my stillest, your inner citadel doesn't make you invincible. It makes you resilient. You'll still feel sadness, still face hardship, still walk through moments of darkness, but you'll no longer fear those moments because you know where the light is. You know where you are. So when the next wave comes, don't scramble, don't collapse, go inward, close the door behind you, sit beside that candle of calm, and remember, you are the fortress, you are the fire, you are the one who stays. Final reflection, a quiet power. You've walked through storms in this video, moments of fire, of fog, of pressure and stillness, not to become someone else, but to return to who you've always been beneath the noise. Emotion doesn't make you weak, but letting it control you makes you tired, exhausted, disconnected from your own strength, and now you know differently. You've seen that control isn't suppression, it's space, it's clarity, it's a choice made gently over and over again. You've seen that emotions are waves, real, but not permanent. You don't have to jump into them anymore. You can stand still and let them pass. But there's a cost to forgetting this, to staying reactive, to continuing the spiral, to living from wound, not wisdom. That cost is your peace, your energy, your presence with the people and moments that matter. The Stoics didn't write to impress anyone. They wrote to remind themselves, be calm, be deliberate, be here. And now, so do you. So what do you do next? You keep practicing. You take one moment today, just one, and choose a different response. A breath instead of a reaction, a pause instead of a judgment, a question instead of a conclusion. And if this voice helped you get here, if these words steadied something inside you, if this kind of stillness speaks to your soul, then subscribe, not to follow, but to come back to this space whenever the world gets too loud. Because power isn't always loud, sometimes it whispers, and those who hear it are already beginning to change.